You've probably been told that high intelligence looks like perfect grades, or solving complex math in your head. But in reality, a highly intelligent brain is usually the quietest one in the room. Cognitive science shows that true intelligence isn't just about storing facts. It means your brain processes reality on an entirely different frequency. When your mind is wired to constantly hunt for patterns and juggle multiple variables, you naturally develop specific behaviors to handle that massive mental load. These aren't random quirks or signs you're just an overthinker. They are observable habits tied directly to your processing speed and working memory. Let me tell you about 8 everyday habits of people with extremely high intelligence, what's actually happening inside your brain when you do them, and why they matter. You can't stop asking why. You're watching a movie with friends and someone casually mentions a random historical fact. While everyone else just nods and keeps watching, you secretly pull out your phone to look it up. You end up falling down a rabbit hole, reading 3 different articles about it before the movie is even over. You don't just want the surface answer. You need to know the entire system underneath it. Psychologists tie this habit to a trait called openness to experience. Studies consistently show this is one of the strongest predictors of high intelligence. Your brain naturally seeks out new ideas, patterns, and abstract concepts because it has the processing power to actually digest them. For you, an unanswered question feels like a mental itch you have to scratch. It's not about collecting random trivia so you can sound smart at parties. It's a biological drive to build a more accurate model of how the world works. When you understand the deeper reasons behind a simple fact, your brain can easily connect it to a dozen other things you already know, making your internal map even stronger. You're comfortable being wrong. You're in the middle of a heated debate, completely convinced of your side. Then, the other person brings up a solid piece of evidence you hadn't considered. Instead of doubling down, getting defensive, or moving the goalposts, you immediately stop, process the new information, and completely change your stance. You look at them and say, "You know what? You're right." There's a scientific term for this. It's called cognitive flexibility. It's the mental ability to easily shift your perspective and update your beliefs the second new information appears. For a highly intelligent brain, the ultimate goal isn't protecting your ego, it's finding the correct answer. This is closely linked to your brain's executive functioning. When a new variable is introduced, your mind doesn't panic and cling to the old plan. It smoothly recalculates the route. People with lower cognitive flexibility often view changing their mind as a sign of weakness or defeat. But you view your current opinions as working drafts. If a better piece of data comes along, you're more than happy to rewrite the whole page. Your mind juggles multiple ideas at once. You're cooking dinner, listening to a fast-paced podcast, and actively trying to solve a complicated problem from work all at the same time. Suddenly, someone walks into the kitchen and asks you a random question. You answer them perfectly, then pick up right where you left off without dropping a single mental ball. There's a specific reason you can pull this off, and it comes down to your working memory. Think of working memory like the RAM in a computer. It's the temporary workspace where your brain holds and manipulates information in real time. Cognitive psychologists consider this one of the absolute best predictors of a high IQ. A stronger working memory means your mental workspace is simply much larger than average. You can hold on to the steps of a recipe, the plot of the podcast, and the variables of your work project simultaneously. You don't just store the information, you actively play with it. This is exactly why you can often see the solution to a complex problem before you even write it down. Your brain has the capacity to lay all the pieces out on the table at once. You see patterns others miss. You're sitting in a meeting, and people are arguing over what seems like 3 separate, completely unrelated problems. While they get frustrated, you suddenly realize that all 3 issues are actually stemming from the exact same root cause. You point it out, and the whole room goes quiet because it suddenly seems so painfully obvious. This happens because of a faster processing speed. Research heavily backs this up. A higher IQ strongly correlates with much more efficient information processing. When data enters your brain, it travels through your neural pathways quickly. Because your brain filters out the useless noise so fast, the underlying patterns jump right out at you. You notice behavioral trends in your friends, predictable outcomes in movies, or structural flaws in a business plan long before they actually happen. While other people are slowly analyzing point A and point B, your brain has already connected the dots all the way to point F. You aren't psychic, and you aren't guessing. Your mind just recognizes the rhythm of a situation much faster than average. You enjoy being alone more than most. It's a Friday night, and your friends text you to cancel the big plans you had. Instead of feeling disappointed, left out, or lonely, you feel a massive wave of relief. You gladly put on comfortable clothes, open a book, or dive into a personal project, completely content in your own company. There's fascinating evolutionary science behind this. A major study from the London School of Economics found that people with higher intelligence actually report less life satisfaction when they spend a lot of time socializing. For most of human history, close social groups were strictly required for survival, but highly intelligent people are generally much better at adapting to modern challenges on their own. More importantly, your brain generates plenty of internal stimulation. Between your thoughts, ideas, and projects, your mind is a very busy place. You don't constantly need external social interaction to keep yourself entertained. It's not that you don't like people or lack social skills. It's just that dealing with group dynamics and social expectations requires a lot of energy, and sometimes you'd rather spend that energy exploring your own mind. You pause before you decide. Someone asks you a seemingly simple question. Instead of giving the obvious, immediate answer, you hesitate. You pause for a few seconds, looking at the ceiling, because you suddenly see 5 different ways to interpret what they just asked. This habit is a hallmark of analytical thinking. High IQ individuals tend to score very well on something called the cognitive reflection test. This test is specifically designed to trick you into giving a fast, intuitive answer that is actually completely wrong. A highly intelligent brain has a built-in speed bump. Before you make a decision, your mind automatically questions the first, easiest answer that pops into your head. You look for the hidden catch. You analyze the variables, weigh the potential outcomes, and deliberately avoid impulsive choices. People might think you're being indecisive, slow, or overthinking things, but you just intuitively know that the most obvious answer is rarely the whole truth, and you're perfectly willing to trade a few extra seconds of silence to get it right. You constantly question yourself. You're the most experienced person in your department, or you've spent years studying a specific subject. Yet, you frequently catch yourself thinking, I really don't know much about this at all. You often worry that you're missing something important. This feeling is driven by stronger metacognition, which is simply your ability to think about your own thinking. Highly intelligent people have a deep, highly realistic awareness of the limits of their own knowledge. This is essentially the exact opposite of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with low ability drastically overestimate how smart they are. Because you easily grasp how incredibly complex the world actually is, you know exactly how much you don't know. You can clearly see the massive gaps in your own understanding. This habit makes you much more cautious with your judgments. You rarely make absolute black and white statements. You prefer phrases like, it's highly probable, or the data suggests. You constantly question yourself because your brain demands a very high standard of proof before it accepts something as a fact. Simple things bore you faster. You pick up a new hobby, like a strategy game, a complex puzzle, or a craft. For the first few days, you're completely obsessed. But the exact moment you figure out the core mechanics and realize you can win easily, you completely lose interest and never pick it up again. This happens because your brain has a distinct preference for complex problems over simple rewards. It's directly tied to your dopamine regulation and goal-directed behavior. Most people are driven by the immediate, simple reward of finishing a task and checking a box. But for you, the actual joy is in the friction. You have a massive amount of intrinsic motivation for cognitively demanding tasks. When a problem is tough, your brain fires up, highly engaged in untangling the mess. But once the pattern is solved and the challenge is gone, the mental reward drops off a cliff. Doing something you already know how to do feels like a massive waste of processing power. You aren't easily distracted or lazy. Your brain is just aggressively hunting for the next difficult puzzle to solve. When you step back and look at all these habits together, the real picture emerges. High intelligence isn't about knowing all the answers from the very beginning. It's an operating system built to absorb, adapt, and seek out the complex patterns hiding in plain sight.